Perspective, a Dvar Torah for Parashat Lecha. Was Christopher Columbus a violent conqueror or a modern pioneer? Was David Ben Gurion a national hero or a contemptible murderer? Should pickles be made with vinegar or salt? These are all examples of questions that depend greatly on perspective. What got me thinking about this while learning this week's Parashah was the first Rashi in Parashat Zayin. When discussing Hagar, Sarai's maid's origins, he mentions Rabbi Shimon's opinion that Hagar was Pharaoh's daughter, who, when seeing the miracles that occurred to Sarai when she was taken by the Egyptians, decides that she'd be better off as a maid in Sarai's house than a mistress elsewhere. This is where perspective comes into play. According to Rashi, Hagar is given to Sarai based on what her father perceives. He sees what takes place when Sarai is in his house and decides to send his daughter there. Hagar sees that she gets pregnant, according to Rashi and Midrash, immediately, something her mistress couldn't, and her mistress is belittled in her eyes. Before telling me that basing myself on a Midrash is out of character, let me show you that seeing plays a major part in our story. Sarai repeats what Hagar sees with her eyes. Avraham tells her to do what is right in her eyes. Hagar names the well Be'er Lachai Ro'i, after the fact that she can see after seeing. The spring, which later metamorphoses into a well, is called an Ain, Hebrew for eye, and is positioned on the eye of the road. Even the seemingly unrelated word hit'ani, be afflicted, sounds very similar to the eye theme. That's why I'd like to figure out what Pharaoh saw to cause him to sell his daughter to slavery to Sarai and Avram. At first glance, this question seems moot. Rashi told us that Pharaoh saw the miracles done for Sarai when she was taking against her will to his house. The problem is that that's not what the Midrash from which Rashi quotes says. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says in Midrash Rabbah that Pharaoh saw the deeds that occurred to Sarai in his house, not the miracles mentioned by Rashi. I know this might seem like nitpicking since weren't the miracles exactly what they saw, but the Midrash knows how to use the word miracles when it wants to. The very next sentence of the Midrash mentions that Avimelech saw the miracles that happened to Sarai in his house and gave his daughter to Avraham as well. That's why I believe the Midrash might be referring to something else that happened in Pharaoh's house, something that didn't happen in Avimelech's house and that Pharaoh hoped to prevent from happening to his daughter. The Midrash chose to send us back to Perek Bet when Avram and Sarai go to Egypt. Upon arrival, Avram tells Sarai that now he knows she's a good-looking woman and that when the Egyptians see her, they might kill him and take her. This is what happens, and Egyptians see her followed by Pharaoh's minister who see her as well. This leads to her being taken by Pharaoh, and the rest is history. In comparison, Avimelech does not see anything. In fact, he sounds perplexed when he asks Avraham what he saw that caused him to do what he did. Avimelech then chooses to snub Avraham twice more by telling him to dwell where he sees fit, batov be'enei chashev, and tells Sarai that Avraham is acting as her eye covering, ksutenaim. What Pharaoh saw that happened to Sarai is that once she reached Egypt, she was perceived as an object. She didn't even merit a name. What you see is what you get. In Egypt, this happens even to the great lady of Sarai's scope. The difference between Sarai and every other Egyptian woman is that she manages to escape this fate, something Pharaoh wants his daughter to be able to do as well. When examining the difference between Sarai and the other woman, Pharaoh notices that it isn't her class that differentiates between Sarai and the Egyptian woman. It's the fact that others give her a name. It's that she's perceived as an individual. This difference becomes apparent at the beginning of Parashat Zayin when Sarai's maid has a name. In a culture where most mistresses are nameless, with no individuality, Hagar is an anomaly. Hagar might see differently, be it simply the fact that she conceived, an assumption that this conception elevates her to the station of mistress, or anything else. Be the perceived opportunity she sees at what it may, it seems she misses the point. Without Sarai perceiving her as an individual, she'd still be nameless. Why did Rashi choose to change the midrash perception? Could people stay decent after eating pickles and vinegar? Some questions will have to be examined at some other time. If you enjoyed this video, why don't you see if you can pass it on to someone else? Or subscribe to the channel. Maybe they'll enjoy seeing it as well. You could also see about purchasing a copy of my book, Echad Shoev Tanakh. There's a link that you could find below. As always, I am Dovi Holtz, one who loves Tanakh.